coffee. So in that case, we actually enriched the community by making sure that they have enough coffee. And in that case, we also get biomass to make sure that we don't use the fossil fuels, and also enriching the community in making sure that we have a circular economy. So we do both circular economy as well as safe waste disposal. So in that case, all the other details are a bit detailed. For example, we need a lot of energy for cement production. Then, of course, 65% of the energy is alternative fuel. So I think I would rather go to the most important slide for the interest of time. No, it's not freezing. Yeah, sorry, it's freezing. It doesn't pick the. So these are the fuels that we normally use. Basically, we use agricultural waste and industrial waste. So you can see around 7 of them. Actually, 6 are biomass, then followed by the industrial waste, then used oil. At the moment, we are not using municipal solid waste. That's where we are coming in to make sure that we can, if possible, with financing, we can actually achieve. So this is what we want to do. So in case we get financing, we would actually transform the waste from the municipal solid. You can see we have a pretreatment facility. This is actually applicable in Europe. And I was lucky, I went to India, and I found out that it's really practical. They are doing it in Goa. And we realized that they have a system in place called EPR, that is Extended Producer Responsibility, where they actually, the municipal, the producers, the government, and the Pollution Control Board, they work together to make sure that all this are achieved. So you can see, so long as you have the treatment facility, which is very expensive, you can have the refuse-derived fuel. That is what we can take to the cement plant and consume without any problem. Then you can also have the clean city, that is the green city. So this is actually applicable, and I saw it myself in Goa. Then the electricity, they also have biogas. Then you also have compost manure and plastic recycling plant, and that is, I think this is where we are doing actually right now. We are picking up plastics. In Uganda, it's currently done. And of course, the energy for the cement plant. This is done in Europe and some plants in India. So this is practical and it's achievable. So the major issue is the constraints. The pretreatment facility requires a lot of money. And I remember we came up with a proposal in 2017. And the quotations we got was a lot of money, especially with the distance from Kasese and the facility in Kampala. So it cost around $7 million as a quotation that we got, but it's applicable in other areas, so why not here if we have the financing? Then the logistics challenge, Kasese being 300 kilometers away. So the bulk density of this material is really low, making sure that we have to invest in logistics to make sure that we transfer this material so that it can make business sense to the cement plant. The material itself has variable chemistry. That means it has a lot of chlorine, and that means the plant has to invest for this facility, that is a chlorine bypass, to make sure that it doesn't have any problem with the process of this cement plant. Also, the high moisture content, a dry is required, because cement plants require moisture below 14% of the fuels. So in that case, a dryer must be procured to make sure that this fuel is used. Then, of course, we have to make sure that we have a stakeholder management to make sure that everyone is, all the expectations of all the stakeholders actually achieved. So with this, I think it's possible. So as HIMA, so long as we have the financing, we can always come up with a public-private partnership with all the stakeholders and make sure that we have Kampala a green city. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Baka. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, once again. I am George Asimwe. Uganda. And so we think that in order to harness the opportunities available within the green city space, we need to make sure that we address some of the challenges. So beyond regulation and putting in place supportive policies, Jacob stated in his presentation that one of the major challenges is actually the fact that Greater Kampala Metropolitan is not planned. So it also becomes difficult to do business in an unplanned environment. So in light of that, we are looking to invest in 4 municipalities, heavily in partnership with the EU, looking at the new cities that are going to come up. Government has designated 7, but 4 are going to be declared in the next financial year. These are cities where you can harness opportunities of green city development in whichever area you're interested in. So in these 4 master plans that we will be developing, we shall be trying to identify bankable areas, areas of opportunity where we can partner with the private sector to make sure that we create jobs, we create catalytic opportunities that transform these cities. So you might want to note that we have Arua, Gulu, Jinja, and Mbarara to begin with. And so these will have comprehensive master plans. Bankable projects will be identified. These are infrastructure and investment projects, but mostly that look at exploring PPP opportunities with private sector. And we shall also, closest to our heart, try to demonstrate a circular economy in the support of the transit towards green growth, and this is demonstrating diversion. Hima Cement has said they have the capacity, they would love to reach a capacity of processing 15,000 tons of organic waste. This can only happen if we are able to divert the waste, if we're able to improve its sorting and the transfer as well as supply value chain mechanisms. So in so doing, Kampala alone the waste in Kampala alone will not be enough. So we need to annex Greater Metropolitan. We also need to annex all these other cities to be able to supply the biomass required by these industrial actors. So this negates the need for a landfill. because we can clearly divert. So one of the things we'll be doing will be to try and set up diversion centers, as well as work with waste collection companies and any companies that are willing to engage in the diversion of solid waste to make sure that that diversion happens. I'm glad I see my colleague Matthew in the room, and he's also working towards that. Part of what they are doing at GIZ is focused on diversion of plastics, so we don't have a shortage of competence in this. But the idea is we can demonstrate circularity, we can demonstrate that we can create jobs and be able to divert this waste and turn it into a resource. I finally would love to end with talking about opportunities for attracting green investment flows in this country, because beyond having all these ideas, I think they rely a lot on the availability of sustainable financing, green sustainable financing. So as the Global Green Growth Institute, we will continue supporting the accreditation of KCCA to the Green Climate Fund in relation to cities, as well as Uganda Development Bank for private sector. We think if we can attract green climate funds into this country, then the Uganda Development Bank can actually disburse them out at sustainable lending rates to private sector. But we can also blend it with some of the opportunities available within the EU to blend GCF financing with available private sector financing windows available in the EU. And then finally, we also want to design projects that can partner with the private sector. So if you have a very good idea around green city development, Jacob talked about transport and e-mobility. We have a meter gauge railway that's coming up, transport corridor that's going to be, exploring mass transport for the citizens. This is an area of partnership. We have e-mobility opportunities, e-buses. The BRT will be on up for grabs very soon. This is a very good opportunity. We have Dundu, which is the new waste processing facility, will be up also for management, for taking over. So these are all opportunities, and we can help in structuring, in preparing, but as well trying to blend the financing necessary to match the investment needs that will emerge. I want to end with one thing, to say that in all of this, we are also trying to prepare the local governments, because we've known that institutional capacity also stifles private sector competitiveness and also reduces opportunities. So we will work with the municipalities to build their capacity, to enhance their readiness, to be able to learn how to manage PPPs, how to partner with private sector and facilitate business in those areas. So I urge you on this note to harness the opportunities within the cities and see that we can make the green city vision proactive and realizable. I thank you very much.
Thanks very much. We have 15 more minutes. If you're not too asleep or too tired, I suggest we use them for a Q&A. Who has a question?
Yes, my name is Johan Ackman, and it's been very encouraging during the whole day, not only here, but during the whole day, to see how much the awareness has increased when it comes to environmental question, traffic, waste, and so forth. But these are all big projects, whether we're in China or Uganda or European Union or wherever. How optimistic or pessimistic are you when it comes to the hard part, which is not the plan but the actual implementation? What do you think we will have 5 years from now? Because we all see the challenges are big all over Africa and many other parts of the world, but how do you feel about the implementation? Hackman Properties.
Perfect. Another question? Yep.
Thank you very much. I'm Chris Mwanguzi, working with Pasante Uganda Limited, a subsidiary of Pasante AB in Sweden. You've talked about the PPPs, the projects that have the public-private partnerships. What is the contribution that is going to attract the people that the government is bringing on board as the private sector is coming on? Thank you.
Thanks very much. My name is Joshua Mawerere, and I work with the Institute of Corporate Governance of Uganda. And my very biggest concern is as we evolve to what we want to see, I hear less of the discussion about the inclusivity of young people. And are we designing cities for the young people to run with, to work within, and also discover themselves? At what point do we have this engagement with the young people and throw them into the future and the realization of their cities? Thanks very much.
Let's answer one round of three and then pass again.
Thank you for your questions. I'll start with the first one. What do we see happening like in the next 5 years? Let me just simplify it like that. At least for the city of Kampala, we have started showing that things can change towards having green infrastructure. For example, we've developed the non-motorized pilot, which was designed about 10 years ago, but we've been able to deliver it. And apart from delivering that, we've designed connecting links to that one, just to push our point that we know that the pedestrian and cyclist are the ones that need to be safe, that we need to cater for. So we've designed more of these routes that are safe, are specific for these people, along all the corridors that we, for example, I'll give you the railway corridor now from Kampala up to Namamve. Along the railway line, we've designed a cycle lane and a pedestrian walkway. So people walk along the lines. If you see them now in the evening, they walk along the line. But we provided for double tracking, so another line, and also an NMT route. So that kind of thing now is what we are seeing in the next 5 years. Can we implement it, and people who are already using it have a safer place to move? Then the other things which I can see is that, of course, with the traffic congestion that is happening, very, very soon, there will be total gridlock. And we'll all have to think again, and we say, okay, enough is enough. We need to have a bus rapid transit, and it will be in place, at least in 5 years. We'll be there to see it. It's been designed. We don't have any excuse that we should just find the money, implement it, and then, you know, every day people move to work, on average 1.5 hours. But if you, and that's when they are moving from 10 kilometers away from the city. This should be 20 minutes. Using a bus or something that is more efficient. Even if you're a cyclist, you could take 40 minutes to do the 10 kilometers. So that value of time, the moment we get into gridlock and you're spending 3 hours in one direction, then there will be like a big riot and we'll implement the big project. So I can see a BRT down the road. And maybe the other things. Light rail might be too ambitious, but of course it is something that is normally delivered very fast once a politician puts down his foot. But for us, we think that the right way is to go with bus rapid transit. Cities around us are doing it well. There are very many examples around the planet where it has been developed and is working well. On the other question of what are the sweeteners, that's from Chris. The kind of environment we are trying to provide, again, we are not doing enough, to be honest. If, for example, you're putting in place a BRT, the government is supposed to provide the infrastructure, and then those routes will be profitable, and then a private operator can run the route with the buses and all the things that are needed along that route. Are we designing for young people? Yes, and that was a question from Joshua, but we need to implement these things, because we are not going to be the ones that are using these things. Most of us are becoming old. We might still look young, but the things we are trying to develop are for our children. And do you want to say something?
Maybe for implementation, I think for the private sector, so long as the financing is available, even if you don't start big, I've seen some countries where they have just started very small units, and they at least for a start. I think it can work in less than 5 years. You can even start a facility, and it's running.
I would love to compliment, responding to Hackman's question. I think 5 years presents a very good opportunity for us. I've been in this space for the last 4 years, and I've seen companies like Brookside, Chagalanyi Coffee beginning to increase the blend of biomass in their, industrial energy mix, and the demand is enormous to the extent that we don't have enough biomass to supply them, but not really because we don't have, but because the supply chains are not functional. So even when they have the desire and the appetite to blend their production, we don't have enough to suppliers that can deliver that. So I see this, that if we can incentivize companies to deliver this biomass, then we really have a chance to blend our energy mix and move towards being carbon neutral. I see this as an opportunity. Around sweeteners that Chris, you asked, I also would love to use the West PPP arrangement currently being put in place. Minister of Finance, as of December 13th, asked all of us who are working within the PPP arrangement and said, okay, what can government do beyond just the land? And we've said, okay, can you provide pipeline infrastructure just to leverage the project? And they said, okay, give us the total cost that we can begin with in the next financial year. And this is something we're currently, as we speak, working on with IFC to say, okay, so if it's about moving to Dundu, which is about 4 kilometers off the main, how much is the infrastructure going to cost? So these are additional studies we're undertaking, being with the idea of presenting them to finance and government of Uganda to be able to leverage the investment. So there are sweeteners. I see very good prospects, at least from where I sit. And on Joshua's question, I want to stay within West. When you look at what Matthew is doing around plastics and looking at informal waste collectors that are involved in the recycling, these are youthful young people and women that are actually involved. Just the other day I was speaking to Ernest and Young and Unilever, and the idea is to how to incentivize the upper side of the value chain, because we know we have about 18, 20 recycling companies who are operating at less than 40% capacity. Can we collect all the material out of the system using the informal existing mechanisms which are run by youth and women? I think if this kind of programming and designs can be incorporated, even within the NMT. Last year on the Namirembe Road, I saw youth riding their bicycles for the first time on that corridor, that someone would ride from Namirembe up into where the bus park is right now, and there's no fatality or accident. I think this is slowly but steadily becoming an inclusive city, and it might work if we give it a chance and the right amount of investment.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Okay. You've already asked one. Let me give the microphone to other two.
Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Chris Kawesi. I'm representing Dagan Bragan and also the Initiates. Part of our business is waste management. I would like to ask Engineer Joshua on policy and regulations concerning waste management in the city. The current policies or laws are not very flexible on many things, and they don't support some of the programs you want to implement concerning collection and segregation, lack of entry of new players in the city because there are laws that are you can't enter the business, and also profitability outside of the city. So what policies or regulations are you planning to put in place to support the increase of segregation, collection, and hence fulfilling your desired goals?
Yes, thank you. Miguel Leal from Climate Smart. As you said in your presentation that you're going to pursue green climate funding, that usually implies that you have to mitigate climate change. Do you already have ideas in mind how you're going to contribute to climate change mitigation? Thank you.
Thanks very much. And I'd like to ask one, if you indulge me. My name is Pavlos Evangelidis, Head of Section Inclusive Green Economy at the EU delegation here. And it's a question for all three of you. What I found interesting in the poll to the audience that we had in the plenary was that what the participants are deeming is a priority for Kampala to become a real green city is not transport like I was expecting, or waste management. It was an integrated urban planning. So for most people, they prefer a city that works for them, and they clearly think that it doesn't at the moment. So the question is, and I know part of the answer because we started a partnership with KCCA. I know that you're doing efforts in generating your own domestic revenue and at the municipal level and funding the ambitious plans that you have. We spoke about the Green Climate Fund, but I'd like to know more about what is the ambition of KCCA to be more autonomous in budgeting.
Also to update us on the regulations concerning the Kavera, the polythene bags, the banning, and what's happening at the moment.
Okay, so I'll attempt to take on Chris's question as well as Miguel. Chris, you're my colleague, so thank you for that. I think there's a realization that the current KCCA waste management ordinance is really outdated. And I'll keep referring to Matthew because we're doing very similar work. And so we are in this space and we'll be looking at revising the regulations on waste in the city because we know that the current ones don't really provide for that, but the Kampala Climate Action Plan does provide for actual recycling, and the target is put at around 40% by 2030. So the hope is that with that climate action plan in place, now actual ordinances can be revised to reflect the new thinking in light of the Paris Agreement and the NDCs of the country. So there might be a revision of the ordinance as well as a Kampala waste management strategy, which will focus on the greater metropolitan area, so looking at expanding coverage, harnessing the potential within the metropolitan area, and also hand-holding the other municipalities within the metropolitan area. I think on entry of new players, I know, and I saw other colleagues in the room, you must be aware that even as of today, KCCA opened up the bidding process for new concessions. So people are invited to bid. If you're involved in the waste collection and transportation, as of today as we speak, there's an invitation to tender express your interest to take up any of the zones. So this is an opportunity. If you're a waste management company and you want to participate, the opportunity has opened up now. We had 4 zones previously, now we have 27 zones. So you can see that they are opening up to more private sector entrants. So harness the opportunity, seize the moment, discuss with your division contact persons, and they should be able to give you the entry points there. Finally, on your question on the Kavera ban and everything, I think, Pavlos, with your permission, maybe Matthew will make an intervention on this, because as part of his pollution task force, he's involved in it, so I'll indulge him, maybe when I'm done. But on Miguel's question, and then as the microphone goes, Miguel, the GCF is in the process of accrediting the 3 entities that I talked about, but more importantly, we are right now undertaking the collection of ideas, which will comprise the country program. Upon building that country ownership and the pipeline of projects, then we are going to undertake a specific decision by the NDA, the National Designated Entity, will determine which ones will go to feasibility and design, and we're looking for a blend of mitigation actions as well as adaptation actions to be able to blend the two. So if it's maybe in agriculture, then it might focus on adaptation, but if it's within cities, it might most likely focus on emission reduction and mitigation mostly. So we've not yet determined. We have about 4 project ideas so far, 1 on waste, 1 on energy, 1 on transport, but none of them have gone to feasibility or design processes. So we are at that point, and we hope by end of this year to have at least 4 bankable projects that go to GCF, at least to accompany the accreditation process of these entities. Yeah, I think I can. Yeah, so the consultation process gets underway on the 14th of March, so this week. We are meeting the Ministry of Finance to give us a go, no-go on some of the policy areas, and then the consultative process will commence right after that. So if you want, the manager is actually in the session next. I'm happy to share the contacts, and then you get in touch with him. Thank you very much.
Maybe very briefly on the Kavera hot potato. Thanks for passing that one to me. It's very kind of you. Our primary focus of our collaboration is on PET plastics, the easy one to try and address first of all. As I understood, the ban has been reimposed on plastic bags on Kavera. Now, whether that will be successful, there's been a number of attempts in the past. Whether this one will be successful, I am also unsure. So, but in terms of other types of plastics, certainly on PET and HDPE, I think those ones we can certainly already start addressing and already start sorting out mini hubs across the city in the different divisions, which is something we are working closely with the KCCA team on that particular component of waste. But Kavera, still hot potato. I'm sure you're able to answer that question as well, probably better than I am.
Do we have any members of the government here, central level? Okay, would you like to answer that? Because I'm sure everybody in this room is convinced about the harm of Kaveras and single-use plastics. Would you like to answer the other questions before I hand over them?
Yeah, thank you, Pablos. And thank you, George and Chris. I'm going to deal with the one on integrated urban planning. And I was also shocked by that statistic, but I think it is timely. What we are doing as KCCA is to try and attract some funding so that we can carry out a comprehensive urban development master plan for the whole of Greater Kampala, not only KCCA. And we have got a nod from JICA, the Japanese International Cooperation Agency, so they are going to help us to have this done, and it will be about detailing how neighborhoods should look. We already have a multimodal urban transport master plan, so they try as much as possible to make sure that the demand that has been predicted from there can also be used, on those routes, and it will be comprehensive. It will have all the services. You see us every now and then having National Water coming and digging up our roads or umeme. This will be more comprehensive. So all the statutory undertakers, water, electricity, power, telephone, and the sewage, and the roads and all the infrastructure will be planned comprehensively, and then hopefully everything that will be approved will be according to that master plan, and it will be detailed to a level that you will not just have, you have a residential neighborhood and then tomorrow there's an office of 10 stories like is happening in Kololo, Nakasero, and they're like, you know what's happening in our city. So, yeah, that should be able to stop, and that is why I'm saying, the city has been growing organically, if I can put it. Anything happens, and this should not be the case. And that's why we need this plan, so that we agree to it. It is approved by the Physical Planning Board and government, and then we implement it. If it means breaking things. They are.
can't improve on the situation. I think sometimes there is a certain comfort in saying, let's change the laws, without actually changing the people who are implementing it. So maybe let's try implementing what is there, and then see where the gaps are, and then fill in the gaps. How would that work?
Yeah,
I agree with you.
I think it's pretty. I mean, we have legal buildings being built on wetlands. Have you responded to all the questions so far? Yeah. Is everybody happy to give another round? I mean, it's past 7. I'm happy to wrap up, and then you can talk to the panelists in private, or would you like another round? There's a few questions already. Democracy. Who would like to leave now? Raise your hands, please. Who would like to stay for another round? Okay, perfect. Who?
Thanks very much. Once again, Joshua Moire from the Institute of Corporate Governance. This time I want to ask from an angle that concerns corporate governance a lot. And as we go towards the cities that we want to look at, the number of PPPs that are on. And also from my sphere, from the Institute of Corporate Governance of Uganda, we deal in training of a lot of private sector players. And one of the things that comes up very heavily is that when they do a PPP, there's a scare that probably you may delay to be paid. 2, you may actually run down because you're going to put all your capital in a certain project and funding could come a little bit late. Or 2, you have to facilitate a process to get that tender. 3, you have even to facilitate to be paid if you've done a job. And these things are scaring away the partnerships that would actually push further the growth of the cities like we want to see them. Now, in this course that you're in, these are the drives that you are putting together, the PPPs, and working with the private sectors to be able to drive the new cities. What are you putting in place as checkers to make sure that corruption does not thrive, so that we don't have reactionary measures from PAC coming after 3 years to say this was done wrong, money was lost here, money was lost there? What are the checkers before we even go into an agreement? Thanks very much.
You can pass the microphone to gentleman.
Okay, I'm Engineer Johnson Amayo, Deputy ED National and Sewage Corporation. I think in all this, what I see is the issue of physical planning comes in, and the other one, something we tend to forget is, as the lady said, the laws are there. It's about enforcement. We have seen in this city people doing very stupid things, but nothing happens. I have a property somewhere in Chiwature. There's a person who built in the road. You can see the road, the structure is in the road, but nobody has ever taken a decision to go and grade that. So enforcement is an issue. And the third one is mindset change. How is the behavior element in all this? As Ugandans, even issues of Kavera, what have you, it's an issue of mindset. People just have a defiant mind. So what can we do to change this behavior of ours so that people behave the way other people behave? To me, I think those are the 3 things, yeah.
Last one.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. My name is Faizo from High Tech Water. Actually, I'm going to come to the rescue of KCC because they don't have answers. That's the truth. I'm going to answer him. This is a collective responsibility. It's not a one-man's fight. You know, if you go to Rwanda, for example, you will see that the laws are working. You throw a Kavera, you throw a plastic bottle, you're in for it. Even the neighbor you're with will report you to the authorities. So naturally, as he said, we are a bit stubborn. Actually, if you can do business in Uganda and succeed, you can succeed even on Mars. That's the truth. So I would suggest, as KCC and the relative authorities, we come together. We are in water. I had a chat with Mr. George about, for example, the bottles. In Europe, companies are running away. Water bottling companies are running away. They are coming to Uganda and Africa. You know why? Because they are not allowed there. And here we are welcoming them. That plastic bottle can take millions of years to decompose. Are we together in this? So it's just a matter of knowing what to do. And the cases are not going to do it alone. We all have to come together and know, sensitize the population, and then we know what you have to do, each and every one. Thank you.
Thank you. Collective responsibility, please.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I want to agree with the engineer Johnson. Enforcement is a big issue, and it has been going on for a long time. We have a lot of challenges. I'll tell you one thing, and I hope the press is not here. There's an operation I was heading, to be honest, and that was to try and revamp the passenger rail service. We had to make sure that the line is safe for people who are passing there. So first of all, the train can pass. The electricity that of those houses that were very close to the track is removed. All the illegal structures that are about to fall on the line are removed. You know, it's quite interesting when the rail regulators tell you that for freight, yeah, no, it is allowed to pass. You know, the market can be there when the train comes. They move on the side. But once you have passengers, it's a different story, and that's why there were those evictions. But the wrath that came with that, going to court and all those things, those are the things that stop you from enforcing. Difficult, so, you know, once politics is a big problem, you know the answer. But we need to change this. You can't say that we are very different from people in Rwanda. We are not different. We are just, I think we are too relaxed. We have an environment that is, you know, you can even go and pass a red light. You don't care. No one is going to get me. I'm going. Why? We have a big problem. You have people on the road at the traffic lights selling things, and you are buying. Why don't they remain there selling? So it is like you say, collective responsibility for all of us. We need to be serious, and I cannot agree with you more. All these ordinances and things, they need to change. And there's also that issue of corruption, and it was said in the morning, it's not one way. So someone is asking for money, you are paying, you know, then the circle is just going to continue. It's the same everywhere. So we need to try and make sure we have a society that is fair to all of us, and people work for each other to make sure all of us have a better life. But above all, we need to try and make sure that we bring up all the other people, that we serve them as much as possible. And once we have that mentality, once you're in a position like mine to serve people, then maybe it can help. But there's a limit. If you are serving people and you can't be tough, hawkers all over the place, you know, you're limited. Don't touch my people. That area is coming when we are going to do even nothing.
I think our time is really now spent. I would love to end by agreeing with Engineer Amayo. I think you're on point. Trudy, you're also on point. Joshua, I don't really know much about corporate governance. I could actually learn a lot from you, and we could all benefit from the work you do, I want to believe. But I want to say that as part of the mindset change and physical planning and all the challenges we're facing, there's a process that we intend to undertake. I'm not so sure it will solve the problem, but it might be a step in the right direction. So we're proposing an enactment and
Yeah.